make the amendment. He's got a transcript letter that he's going to give to Deb for revision.
All right, let's get started.
$20,000 to the law.
If you want, I wouldn't actually mind. No what? No, it's not the letter you hope for. Sorry. As we mentioned earlier when Jeff Schusslich was up, and I know most of you have heard during the governor's budget speech that he talked a little bit about the use of some available one-time monies for projects and efforts across the state. And so we were approached probably a couple months, maybe 2.5 months ago. The full cabinet was basically informed that these dollars would potentially be available, and if there were ideas for projects that would incur only one-time expenses and would not bring sort of annual requirements of additional expenses to the table, that the governor would entertain concepts or suggested projects to look at that. So Doug and I got together, and it was not really a hard list for us to come up with. We came up with 3 potential projects pretty quickly. One would be, in all these, 2 out of the 3, the thought process was if there were available general fund dollars and we were provided some of those, we could really accelerate the development of some projects that are on the books that we always have full intention of doing, but probably would take us 10 or 15 years to get done, versus if we had some extra money up front, we could probably get them done in a couple to 3 years. So there were 3 projects that we submitted, and I would apologize to you folks right now to let you know that, as you probably are aware, the budget process that we get involved with the governor's office is one of extreme secrecy. So while we put these together, we're really, no one can talk about until the governor makes his decisions about what he's going to do. We don't talk about them. I just say it that way. And so it wasn't until a couple days before his speech that I actually knew he was going to include these in the speech, and we're pretty excited that he had decided to do that. So there are 3 projects. We want to take a few minutes right now, Doug and I, and run through what they are and a little bit about what we've asked for from the general fund to accelerate the development of these projects. So the first one, and largest of the 3, is the Blood Run project. I won't spend a lot of time on the history of that because we've done this with you before. Blood Run is going to be our next state park. We will have a bill this session to have the legislature designated officially as a state park, and we're excited about that prospect. That's the map of showing proximity. You are also familiar with the fact that we contracted with a firm to work on the development of a master plan that will sort of phase in how we would develop this site now that we own the land and have moved forward with that plan. And we've talked to you, I think, about what those elements are. So what we honed in on was phase one development. The land acquisition is primarily done. There's still some additional lands that we're going to continue to work on, but we have enough now for the nucleus of that state park. The Decker acquisition, the core piece of that, we have a contract for. And there's been some rudimentary trails developed, and we did have a naturalist on board all summer that actually hosted folks on tours and began some of that work. Still, obviously, extensive road work and parking and that kind of infrastructure. The big visitor center is obviously a key. I think it's a key thing for us to get done, and that, for me, is the key part of this proposal. Was if we had some extra money, we believe we can get a well-developed and designed visitor center in place within the next 3 years, as opposed to trying to figure out how to piece that together with ongoing operational funds. This is I think you've seen this before, this is a concept that the contractor kind of put together and how that visitor center may look using the concentric design that is important to Native American culture. So the proposal that we put forward to the governor was if he would dedicate $2 million, new dollars that we don't have on the table, we would over the next 2 years be able to, through our normal operations and parks, be able to basically put another $1 million on the table toward accelerating development, and that the Parks and Wildlife Foundation would raise an additional $2 million for a total of $5 million. That we believed we can get that visitor center and much of that key infrastructure in place over the next 2.5 years. That's the commitment that we've made and that he has bought into with his proposal. So the second project that we talked about was the development of a new, more modern, and I would say probably more accessible visitor center for Custer State Park. As you go around and visit national parks and well, even the Crazy Horse Memorial, most modern welcome centers tend to have a small theater where folks can come in, sit down for a 10 or 15 minute presentation that tells you what's available in the park that you're going to visit. We don't have that capability today, and for a park as significant and nice and attractive as Custer is, we just think we could do a lot more to promote our park and what's in it if we had a modern visitor center. And so we pitched that concept to the governor, which he did buy. This is Wiss Associates was contracted to take a real quick and dirty look at how that might happen and where it might be. This, you can see, well, maybe you can. If your eyes are better than mine, it does show the outline of the game lodge in the background of this picture. So if it were placed in this location, it would be right sort of on the other side of the trees from where Creekside is, close to the game lodge. That'd be one possible location for a new visitor center. Another one that we've talked about would be across from the existing visitor center, that open meadow that's right there where, well, during the roundup where they have all that concession. That's another spot that would be very accessible and would work for this. So he agreed to do that, and of course what we're looking at is a better way to talk about the natural resources during the park, the significant history associated with the park, some of the cultural traditions and opportunities that are there. So that proposal in itself was $1.5 million new dollars from the general fund, $500,000 from our ongoing operations, and then working with the Parks and Wildlife Foundation to raise $1 million in private money for a total of $3 million, which we believe is what we would need to design and build this facility in the next 2.5 years. Absolutely.
You know, with the theater there, I think the vision is to do a state-of-the-art video with state-of-the-art video equipment that would make the visitor just feel like he was right in the middle of the action in the park. You know, we have folks like the National Geographic Society come in and film in the park, and they've been there in the last year. There's a lot of footage that we can probably use if we work with them, and I think there's a chance to work with them in the future. You know, you all saw the National Treasures movie, what's the right title for it, but anyway, the big movie a few years ago that centered up at Sylvan Lake and some of the aerial photography that they did, you know, up in the Needles and whatnot. The point is that this can be state-of-the-art, world-class orientation that really behooves the kind of park that Custer State Park is, and I think this project is just going to move another element of Custer Park into the 21st century, and I think it's really going to be something that our visitors are going to respond to. And the ultimate goal of that project is to get visitors to want to explore more of the park, spend more time in the park, more time in the Black Hills, and at the end of the day, it'll be good for the tourism industry, it'll be good for state parks, and it's going to mean that more people are going to enjoy the park for what it is.
A couple folks, we've done this. We talked to the foundation board this morning, and as I think Commissioner Cooper mentioned, they did actually pass a resolution of support and commitment to raise this money that we're talking about, so they're on board officially. The third project is another project that we've talked with you about off and on. It's a slow-moving process, again, with the federal required studies and analyses that have to go on. But this is actually an extension or a branch off of the Nicholson Trail up to Mount Rushmore. It's an 18-mile trail, as it would be mapped out. We've done some work to get to where we are today, which actually is a significant amount of work because we finally got the Forest Service to endorse a route, and it took a long time to work through all the options and get public comment and do the necessary public input for them to buy into it. But they have bought into this connector trail. The trail outlined in yellow is the selected alternative, if you will, and that would be what we'd be looking at building. This project would get us accomplish two things. The next step in the process is it requires an environmental impact statement to be done, and so Forest Service won't pay for that, so we've got to find the money to pay for that. We've got that money. It's included in here. Don't know what the cost will be. It has to be bid, but there's an estimate that it'd probably be $500,000, more or less. In this case, Parks and Wildlife Foundation we're asking them for about $100,000, but the big nonprofit donor in this effort will be the Mount Rushmore Society. Doug and I are going to go visit with their board next week and try and fill them in on the details. There's little doubt that they're quite excited about it. This is a project they've been watching and been encouraging on over the years as different stages have happened. And so we're optimistic that they'll not only buy in for $1 million, they may commit to even more. We're not sure. And the importance of that level of commitment is we can get the environmental impact statement done over the next year or two, but we've got to then find $8 million to actually build this thing. And we think one of the logical sources for that is the Recreational Trails Program, which requires a match. And so the money that the Rushmore Society would potentially bring to the table would certainly provide most or all of the match requirements that we could get out of the Trails Program. So we don't show the $8 million construction cost. That's a couple years out. And again, the time frame of which we have to use these general funds is that we have a 2-year spending window. So it would be essentially, if it's approved by the legislature, we'd have access to the funds starting in July, and we'd have 2 years from July to get them obligated, if not totally spent. So